And next we're going to put a parallel line inside of that one. And again, I'm drawing sketchy. I always do, so that I can hunt the line as I go. It's the best way to get there. You can correct it as you go. It just works better. And the other thing that works really well is to be watching the line you're paralleling and not the one you're drawing so much. It just, I don't know why our brains are like this. It's like, you know, keep your eye on the ball kind of stuff. So you want to keep your eye on the line you're trying to stay away from at the same distance here. And also watch that shape between that should stay the same. And we're going to have a line across the bottom as well. And we're going to put a little H up here. We don't even need to put the crossbar because there's two of them already. We're going to keep them. Okay, now you know what we're doing, I bet. If you're in the United States, it's kind of fun to put. It's always got embossed or something. Mailboxes almost always have U.S. mail on them. And I'm doing this without any guidelines or anything, so I'm not sure how it's going to turn out, but I can fix it, so it's all good. So this is a mailbox, and it's a mailbox we're looking at right straight in the face. And this is a wonderful icon because mailboxes just have, they're fraught with meaning and feelings and associations and stuff because they're how things come in and out of your life. Good and bad, you know. You might open this and it's full of bills, or you might open it and there's a surprise check, who knows, or a birthday card, or a letter from somebody who still writes letters that you haven't heard from in a long time. Most days there's a lot of junk, but I really find the Daily Mail a good source for sketching when I don't, you know, have any ideas. There's always something weird in there, you know, or there's an interesting pattern on something, or an ad, or a sticker that is strange. And, you know, I mean, when there is nothing else, go through your junk mail before you recycle it, and there might be something interesting. Okay, a mailbox, if you're putting it in your sketchbook stories, it probably sits on a pole. And I always like to put some grass at the bottom of that pole, and maybe a flower or two. Now, the other way that a mailbox might be situated is that you're still looking at this from the front. And go ahead and draw another one with me because it gives you more practice in parallel lining and making U's, and it's a little harder to make an exact match, I must say. I think this one's fatter than my first one. No, it's skinnier, who knew? Okay, so this time I'm going to make it open. All right. And I'm going to say that this mailbox sits on one of those shelf things that people do. Like, there's a lot of mailboxes next to it sometimes. And I'll put some legs here so that it makes sense. And hold it up. And then how are we going to have it open? We are going to just reverse what we did right here. So we're going to have this go down because the flap, obviously, is the same size as the front. And so coming down here, our little hooky deal is attached to this part. There is another parallel line down here because, and it doesn't look quite as wide, but there's an edge or ledge or whatever on this inside cover. Okay, and there's this hingy kind of deal. It's not the same line as the bottom of the mailbox up here. And now you've got one that's open, and it means that you can put things in it. So you might want to go with regular mail, whatever kind of mail you might get. If I were being truthful, there'd be a big box of something jammed in there, so I can't even get it out, because that's what my postman likes to do. He thinks that's a good thing. If you don't come in the driveway and you just ram the box in there with all your might, and it's sure to make your customers happy. So maybe there's some smaller letters in here too, and a package, and maybe your postman's a little nuts too, and he put a horizontal package there. All very interesting stuff. And maybe something fell out. Maybe remember how we make our boxes? No, I'm not going the same way we always do, because in the lesson we start with this line. But I've made about 70 million boxes in my life, and so I'm doing the same thing. I'm just not necessarily doing it in the same order. So there's a box that fell out because he couldn't get any more in there. Maybe he threw it on the ground and left it there. But anyway, there can be so many stories in your illustrated life sketching, that involve your mailbox. Another iconic thing that's common in all of our lives and that has a lot of meaning is a candle. And drawing candles of all kinds gives you a lot of practice in drawing cylinders and painting them and shading them, which is really good practice. And for those of you who take my other classes, candle's not real different from a roll of toilet paper. It just has a few things going on that are different. So we're going to start up most simply with a rectangle, because looking straight on from the side, the candle is a rectangle. Even though it's round, we don't know that yet unless we put shading, if we're looking at it straight on. And they usually sit in a little dish. This is going to be a weird little dish with corners. I don't know where that came from, it just did. Okay, and there's a wick at the top of the candle. And there's usually a flame, and a flame is a teardrop or a water drop, like we've drawn for other reasons in other places. And if the candle is burning, then wax is probably melting, and you're going to have some kind of uneven thing happening here. And sometimes at the edge, you're going to have a bump running down from that melting wax. So that's one version, a pillar candle. If we want to switch our angle just a little bit, then it gets more interesting. And we do that like we look at a toilet paper roll. So we're going to start by looking at that oval that's at the top and draw it as loosely as we can to get a nice job of it. And then we drop verticals down at each side. And then we round the bottom to match the top. Since this was a rectangle, we know that's parallel to that. So if that's going to bend, so is this going to bend. And then we can see that the wick comes out of the center there. And put our little flame. Pillar candles sometimes collect their melted wax right inside, and they don't have all this going on at the side. But you can do it if you want to do it, because it's kind of cool looking. So you got a long drip, and then not quite so long of a drip, and then along this side, as it should be kind of a soft curve there as it's running over. I'm going to get rid of the edge of the candle. These tiny erasers are wonderful. They're made by Mono Zero. And they get into the littlest places, which just works out nicely sometimes. So, as you know, pillar candles come in all kinds of sizes and heights, and an arrangement of them always looks good. And so let's have a little taller one. Because the top is a little taller than this one, the oval is a little more skinny this way. And so this stands here, and we have another perspective thing going on here, which is that if something is behind something else, it's higher. Its bottom is higher. Now, as there's more space involved, the thing gets smaller as well. But here, these are on the same tabletop. And so this one is just behind it. And it's really important to lift it like that, because if you don't, and it's right here, it's going to look like this is chopping into the side of it. And that's not what you want. So a candle arrangement is really nice on any sketchbook page. Tapered candles are very fun, and you can put them into candelabras. And they are basically, they start out being a pair of parentheses, but they kind of straighten out at the bottom. So, and it's interesting to get them even on the two sides. Takes a little bit of practice. And then they sit in a candle cup, which, guess what? Candle cup is just like a pillar candle. So we're going to put that oval, but we're not seeing the back of it because it's being hidden. And then we're going to make that parallel to that. And after this, a lot of things can happen. It can be on a candlestick, which I guess that's what we'll do here. So there is a little dish under here. And the dish is for catching, guess what? Dribbles, which again, I love to put on here because they're fun. And once you burn a candle like this, so you're going to have dribbles, you're also going to have a top that's no longer pointed like that. We'll put a flame on this one too. And so this comes down, and there's a little dish to catch the melt off, and then there's a candlestick of one kind or another. They can be fancy, not fancy, whatever you have in your life that you wanted to draw as a candlestick. We have votive candles. And again, starting with that oval. And the votive candle is usually in a holder. Now, it can be a straight holder, or sometimes they come in like a flower pot would. This one's going to be straight. And this is the bottom of the glass candle holder. And then the little votive would be in here. And because it has a round bottom, and the round bottom is sitting on this round bottom, then all of this kind of stuff is the same. So the bottom of that would be sort of parallel to this. I don't have this low enough, though, because it's sitting too far back. If it was sitting in the middle, then this line at the bottom would be lower, like it's in the center of that oval that makes the bottom of the holder. And then, of course, we have the top and a flame. The flame can be exciting and be coming out of there, so it could start a fire. Votive candles usually, or holders usually, have a little extra glass at the bottom. That way the heat, when the hot wax comes down, the heat doesn't transfer through thinness onto the tabletop. So votive candles are usually lit for an intention, or in a church, they're lit for prayer. They're a tiny little safe form of having a candle if you're a person that forgets they're burning, things like that. Tapered candles can be used if you are, if your sketchbook is talking about some kind of dinner that you went to, or a fancy restaurant, or usually these will show up on a dinner table. Pillar candles are more about relaxation, meditation, mood. They're burned to, they can be scented to change the atmosphere around them. So they would be really good if you were doing a page and say you were illustrating a quote about peace and serenity or something like that. That could be the illustration for that. So the whole point of these guys is to be able to help you to tell your story by having pictures that are worth a lot of words. One more kind of candle is the birthday candle, and they're usually pretty lumpy because they usually have a kind of a spinning thing going on around them, and they're multicolored, and their wick is at the top. And these would be really useful for talking about anybody's birthday. Just, you don't even need the cake or anything else. But if you have like 2 or 3 of these in a group, and you put those little striations, actually it wouldn't be a straight line at the side when that's going on. It's kind of roundy like that, which makes them fun. And at the top, our little flame. So this gives you a language of candles. They're iconic and they bring things to mind, and they're all pretty nice things. You know, to make your environment more peaceful than it is, to celebrate your birthday, to have a formal dinner, to light a couple candles and read a book or drink a glass of wine or soak in a bathtub. They're really good for all of that. And now we're going to go for a little perspective, a little bit more difficult. Not too bad though. And we're going to start the same way, maybe a little smaller, with a capital U. And I'm going to make that side just a little bit longer. So we're not going to be looking at this right on the nose. Okay, so that's our front. And we're going to take a slanted line. This is a lot like drawing our boxes was. Take a slanted line back from there, and we're going to parallel it right here. We're not going back far enough into perspective to have to worry about all of this coming together and all that stuff. Nah. But what we need to do is we need to manage to parallel this part of the U back here to make it look right. So I'm going to turn my book so I can see it better and make a line right back here that's parallel to that one. Not bad so far. Okay, a fun thing is that there is often a flag if you've got something in there that's ready to go. So this is just rough, but there we go. I'm going to have this be open. And so that means that we would see the line that is here, which is parallel to this one because it's the other side of the flat rectangle that is the bottom of a mailbox. So when we put that one in there, now we've got some reality going on. What about having it open? Okay, I'm going to just take an angle like chosen angle, but it's got to make some sense, right? And here is our front cover, but now we're going to see the outside edge of it here. So that'd be a straight line there and a parallel line here. And as it comes around the front, it is going to get kind of thin and disappear. And then magically, it's going to show up over here. Okay, again, we don't share that bottom, and actually there is a kind of a, leave enough space to indicate that there is kind of a ledge back there too. And we have our our little thing we open it with. We're going to stand this on a pole. We don't have to, it could be on a shelf. Okay, and again, I always put some kind of grass, fun things, sometimes flowers. You can do whatever you want. That isn't even a good flower, you. Okay. What do I want to be in there? I think I just got one really important piece of mail. I think it's something telling me I won the Publishers Clearinghouse or something. So I'm just leaning that in there. And then, of course, I've got to get rid of the line that wouldn't show. And this is an envelope, and you can indicate an envelope by a couple of little squiggly lines there, and a couple here, the address, the return address. And there we go. We have a mailbox out at the curb, vegetation growing. I sometimes get weird and I'll stick envelopes that fell down here. And I'll show you in a second how to easily draw an envelope. Okay. Now, envelopes. They are another big icon because you can collect them and put things in them and send things to people and organize things in them. And if they are a letter envelope, it's pretty easy treatment because we're going to start with a rectangle. We're going to do the front first and the back second, so 2 rectangles. And make them like pretty much the same size. You can see why I work in pencil first, right? Lots of correcting as I go. And that is not quite as thick. It will be the same on the front and on the side. So if you're seeing a whole envelope, this is the front. We got a return address. We got a little stamp. Those are always fun. You can make that a color. And an address. Now on the back, you basically make an X. And this is the flap. And you can make that overlap a little bit because it does. It doesn't line up anymore like an X because this flap comes down. This is actually a flap too, and it's folded up and glued inside, and then this flap comes down over it. So there we have the back and the front of an envelope. If it's a love letter, you could put a little heart sticker to keep it closed. Too cutesy, right? So anyway, that is that kind of an envelope. This is a box. Want to put a label on the box? Just remember your parallel, okay? So we're just making a rectangle, but it's glued to the top of the box. And so that means that we're making it parallel, this to this, this to this, this to this, and this to this, this to this, and this to this. And then it's all going to look like, yeah, it was supposed to happen that way. All right, now sometimes you get big envelopes, and you're either packing envelopes or catalog envelopes. Let's do a catalog envelope over here. And they are fun. They always have who knows what in them. Sometimes important documents and sometimes just more junk mail. Anyway, they are kind of a tall rectangle. And they have a flap that comes up here. This is sort of a capital D here, you see. And they're divided the back side anyway, is divided right down the middle. And if it were sealed like this, it would go through the mail. The bottom has a flap that doesn't really match. It's smaller. It's for gluing purposes, and this is for flapping purposes. This, this is for sealing, and usually it's just open with the gum strips. So the bottom one is smaller. And sometimes they are really fun because there is a button here and a button here. These don't usually go through the mail though. And there is a string that comes down and wraps around and round and then has a tail that just goes off to who knows where. So that is a catalog envelope. And we can make a postcard, and I'm going to make a small one because I haven't got a lot of room here, but a postcard can be a big part of a travel journal page or a sketchbook page of any kind, really. You might get a postcard from somebody and you want to sketch that beautiful scene in your sketchbook, or you might doing a wish you were here kind of thing on a trip of yours. Anyway, super simple, a little smaller than an envelope if there's an envelope in the same picture, otherwise it doesn't matter. And there is a dividing thing, and there is a stamp thing, and a little address thing, and then here's where you write, wish you were here. Yeah. Okay, so if that was big, there's all kinds of story you can tell with it, because you can actually write a whole message, send it to yourself, this is all pretend. And what you can do if you're on a vacation, you can put two of them and just have the back and the front and have one overlap the other one, and this one has all the scenery on it and the whatever's going on there, trees or boats or I don't know. You know what? You get the idea, wherever it came from. So that's a postcard. And then the other thing that's really interesting to use as an iconic device on a sketch page is an open envelope. And that is also very easy to do, but you start with your rectangle just like we did all the rest of these. But now your flap is going upwards. So it should round out to a point. Here's a letter V, see, spread out. Should round off to a point just about dead center here. You might want to just mark dead center, because down here you have a smaller flap coming up that you want to hit the same center spot. And then usually what you got going on is something like this, where this is usually just below the flap. Sometimes it's up even with it. But anyway, when you get rid of that line, this is a really interesting sketch to use, because you now can have a letter coming out of here and say anything you want on it. I mean, this could fill a whole page. It could be a letter from you to you, or could be about a letter you got from somebody, or an old letter that you found in a scrapbook, or, I mean, the sky's the limit. I've been known to do stranger things than that, and I have a bunch of flowers coming out of them as if they were a vase or something, just for the heck of it. Anything. You just let your imagination fly. And they do make, out of ceramics, they make envelope vases that hang on your wall. They're very cool. I think that's why, the first time I did this, I think that's why I was looking at one of those. So I'm going to clean up and ink this. So I'm back and I did the inking and then I did the watercoloring, and I love this look of this little ink and watercolor spot illustration. It's just sweet. I don't know. Now, you wouldn't, have all this on one page ordinarily. You might have each of them in some separate part of a story. But it's neat that they had, spot illustrations have a different shape to them and everything, and so they can be slotted into layouts in your sketchbook and look really good. They can be tiny like this, or, like I said earlier, you can make an entire page out of both sides of a postcard really easily. Just make it bigger than this. So now we're going to go on in the next lesson to other iconic things.